Welcome to the Solid Verbal.
The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrand. Joining me, as always, over there in New York City, my beloved co-host and dear friend, the one, the only, Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
A little bit tired, a little bit surprised, a little bit worn out from all sorts of things, but glad to be with you, Ty. How's life with you?
Life is good. Life's a little bit somber because college football, the season is now over. As of today, officially, everyone's undefeated. I love that line.
Mm-hmm.
But we had quite a game last night. Clemson, congratulations to the Clemson Tigers. 44-16, your 2018-19 national champions. A dominating effort from Dabo Swinney, certainly from Brent Venables, from Trevor Lawrence. We're going to go through all of that over the next 45 minutes or so. Clemson, of course, finishes with a mark of 15-0.
Mm-hmm.
Dabo now has as many national championships as Bobby Bowden, as Joe Paterno. It was Alabama's worst loss since 1998 and the vaunted Mike Dubose era, which I'm sure still gives Bama fans some nightmares. Yeah, we've got a lot to break down, Dan. Quite a finish here.
It was, and bless me, really, for saying, now watch Clemson lay the wood. After saying that was the least likely outcome, which altar of Dan, 100% of the time, I'm either right or wrong. Altar of Dan, altar of Dan.
That's right.
Surest thing in college football picking. We both at least took the points, but what we thought of this game before does not matter because we have the actual results. And the actual reality is Clemson now has to be in the conversation of best team ever, just in terms of sheer dominance and production and the level of team they beat at the top. And I could not believe my eyes in the best possible way the degree to which Clemson, in every facet pretty much, from Trevor Lawrence and the lines and the defense and the moments that they won on down, to do that against Alabama is, the king is dead, long live the king kind of thing.
It's funny you bring that up because I was texting with friends at halftime and I was keeping an eye on the halftime line. What was the money line for Alabama still winning the game despite being down at that point 31-16?
Right.
We've seen this before with Alabama. We saw it a bit last year in the national championship.
They strike immediately. Yeah.
They find a way to make a second half adjustment. They reassemble the robot and they find a way to win. That was not the case here. We saw a field goal very early on, about 14 minutes left in the second quarter, that gave Alabama the lead 16-14. And from that point forward, Dan, they did not score. Clemson went on an incredible run, 30 unanswered points between the very start of the second quarter and the very end of the game, as they ultimately end up winning the game by 28 points, which is just amazing to me. I'm glad I didn't take that number that I saw at halftime because it would not have worked out in my favor.
No, it would not have. There were elements of this game, even with how Clemson, we'll start at the top, I'm sure, momentarily, but there were elements of this game, no matter what we had seen for 14 games, whether it was the offensive line, coached by Robbie Caldwell, by the way, Turkey inseminator to the stars.
That's right.
Whether it was that offensive line, a very experienced offensive line led by, I guess, Mitch Hyatt started for 4 years, right?
Yep.
Whether it was the defensive line, which we knew was, with absolute certainty, was going to wreak havoc on anybody lined up in front of them, that it was going to take them on every play, winning every moment, and they outshined even that bar, which was just incredible, especially with the way the game started. We were like, oh, shoot, 14-13 after 35 seconds.
That's right.
It wasn't 35 seconds. We were like, okay, this is TCU Baylor 2000, whatever it was, 14, where it's just 59-56. Last one with the ball wins. Turns out last one with the ball did win, but just in a very calm victory formation.
I'm going to start in the first quarter because, as you hinted, the first quarter was the most frenetic of the game. A lot of back and forth. So first off, Clemson gets the ball. They go 3 and out. Alabama gets the ball. Tua throws a pick 6.
Yes.
On their first possession. Twitter goes nuts. People are going crazy.
Yeah.
Then Alabama gets the ball back. Tua's very next pass. 3 plays into their next drive. A 62-yard strike. A beautiful deep ball to our boy, Jerry Jeudy. With that, Clemson gets the ball back. A touchdown. Then Alabama gets the ball back. A touchdown. And then a missed extra point. Now, we're at 14-13. We're near the end of the first quarter. Everyone's wondering, it's the age-old line. Will the extra point come back to haunt Alabama?
Oh, yeah.
6 points was the line, huh? That's interesting. It's at least plausible at this point. But then Bama forces a 3 and out. They get the ball back. They put together an 11-play, 6-minute drive. It seems like they're starting to steady that ship a little bit. They kick a field goal at the start of the second quarter. That's when they go up 16-14, as we mentioned earlier. From that point forward, again, 14 minutes, 18 seconds left in the second quarter. All Clemson. 30 unanswered points, complete domination for the next 44 minutes and 18 seconds of the football game, Dan. What stood out to you as being the main reasons why Clemson dominated in the manner that they did? And what surprised you about what you saw?
I mean, do you want me to spell out Trevor Lawrence as all of the reasons on offense, at least? So first of all, the shocker in terms of where Clemson went from being down, they were down 16-14 to being comfortably up at the half by double digits, 31-16, is that they were not doing it sort of meticulously with perhaps the best running back in the country, and Travis Etienne. And even when he did break loose for a couple of runs, it was not game-changing necessarily.
No, they used him in a very complimentary role, I thought.
Right. They had a nice screen, I think, to Tavian Feaster on that drive, that touchdown drive, where they got to 21 points. But really, it was going downfield. And this is something I want to sort of bring up later on in the show in terms of strategy against Bama, whatever. But what looked to me as just, at least for the offense, because the defense is also worth really honing in on, was Trevor Lawrence being counted on to not be a freshman on the biggest stage where you would understand if he played somewhat like a freshman, for better or for worse, in that, going in, and I was one of these people, you say, well, is he going to be trusted to do more than read half the field? Is he going to be trusted to look off more than one receiver, go through more than one progression, whatever? And repeatedly, 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 13s, whatever, he was saying, this is the tight window I have to throw in. I'm going to look off this guy, and I'm going to hit Justin Ross here along the sideline. And I'm not just specifically talking about this in the second quarter, but it was Trevor Lawrence having the option to do what needed to be done against a very good Alabama defense, the line protecting him,
right,
and them saying, we are not going to win this game with Tavian Feaster and Travis Etienne on the ground. And let's not even try to do something that we've already determined is not the best course. And we said it, I don't know if it was in the Instagram live thing we did post-game, Dabo Swinney is cutthroat. He may come off as, shucks, but between the Kelly Bryant thing and the we are not going to feed Travis Etienne because we like him and we know he's excellent, if it's the wrong thing to do against Alabama. And I commend that entirely. And I, on that stage to say, we're not going to be 50-50 run pass. We are just going to do everything that's necessary in every possible moment to win. That's best of the best, Ty.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Stuff. That's good stuff. You mentioned Clemson's offensive line. They created what I would describe as a hermetically sealed pocket around Trevor Lawrence for most of the game. That doesn't mean he didn't take some shots. He took some shots.
For sure.
By and large, he had a lot of time to throw. He was under duress a lot less than Tua was, and much more accurate. On the night, 20 of 32, 347 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That is a legendary performance for any quarterback on that big of a stage, let alone the fact that this kid is a freshman. In case you didn't know by now, Dan, Trevor Lawrence is a freshman. He's 19 years old.
Well, now was
a freshman.
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about him for quite some time. For at least the next 2 years, he's going to have Justin Ross with him.
Yep.
He's also going to have some of his other targets around next season as well. He is a once-in-a-generation talent, and it's going to be exciting to see what his ceiling ends up being on the college level, if there is any, if he can continue this incredible run with Clemson. But on a more basic level, just as someone who's watched Brandon Wimbush and watched Ian Book and watched a bunch of other quarterbacks around college football, what stands out to me about him, and I don't care if he's a freshman or a senior, you don't see any of those weird, frantic back foot throws from him.
No.
He's very cool.
He did have one really good back foot throw, but it was not frantic. It was with purpose, I think on a big third down.
You know, you see it a lot in games like this, where an opposing quarterback is overwhelmed by a pass rush or a situation or a bad read or who knows whatever else.
Floats one.
And they back up, they back up, they back up. They sort of float one, trying to get it out of bounds. Maybe they get it there, maybe they don't. Or they float one over the middle, trying to make a play. Trevor Lawrence doesn't do that. He doesn't have to do that. And like you said, even when he's throwing off his back foot, it's going somewhere. There's a purpose to it. He's making that throw because he knows he can complete the pass. That, to me, that little aspect of his game, to me, is what really stands out and puts him head and shoulders above so much of the competition. It's incredible.
By the way, and rightfully so, eyeballs were following the pass itself on that ridiculous Justin Ross third down conversion, one-handed catch along the sideline.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence was absolutely pulverized by Isaiah Buggs on that play. Like, he broke through. He totally beat, I think, the Clemson right guard, I want to say. And to your point, he was not backing up and floating that. He stepped in as well as he could have on that throw, delivered it to the exact window it needed to be delivered to, and got busted up.
Yeah.
And lived to move the chains and play another down. And that's just ridiculous. I mean, how do you be so good that we are talking about you in a game with Tua, who was arguably the best quarterback in the country this year?
Let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about Tua. Tua was on the other side of this thing, and he was going against that vaunted Clemson defensive line, you know, the one that was without Dexter Lawrence, which is still amazing to me. That line for Clemson changed the rhythm for Tua. He had two very uncharacteristic interceptions, one very early, another one still pretty early in the game. In particular, though, Clemson's line and its ability to generate pressure without actually blitzing is what I thought played such a huge role in this game. Whenever you can do that against a good passing team like Alabama, it's a huge advantage. Whenever you do that against any team, it's a huge advantage, but especially against Alabama because it's not something Bama has to deal with a whole lot.
Right.
They were just 4 of 13 on third downs here. On the flip side, Clemson was something like 10 of 15. It felt like they were converting every big third down play. Alabama could not get it going because Clemson was able to play pass coverage and yet still generate so much pressure with their front four.
Did you read, by the way, Pete Thamel, I believe from Yahoo, did like the anonymous coaching scouting report ahead of this game?
I didn't see that, no.
So he did that. And I listen, I am such a sucker. Listen. I am such a sucker for that like blind item. Like it happens a lot in like preview magazines.
Oh,
it's just like anonymous coaches break down because you get a certain amount of honesty.
Athlon does like a whole page per conference on that. Yeah, it's great.
I understand the trepidation about anonymous sourcing, whatever, but I appreciate the honesty in those situations because it's something they're the ones watching the games with a finer tooth comb than any of us. And one of the big notes that caused a minor stir was Alabama's offensive line is good, but not great. And this is still an offensive line with a ton of talent. Jonah Williams might be the first.
He's going to be the first tackle.
Yeah, off the board in the NFL draft. We'll see what happens, but he's on that level. And I saw some pushback with that, especially with our pal and curling teammate Cole Kublik from ESPN, SEC Network.
Future curling Olympian.
Yeah, does radio down in Alabama. And he was like, this is madness. This is insane to say this about this Alabama offensive line. And he's somebody who watches a ton of tape. And I don't know if it was him short selling Clemson or him, just not understanding that what Clemson is capable of. And I of course believe he is. But that was what caused a stir. And Alabama's offensive line, we saw it running plays, and they ran the ball all right at times, but protecting Tua. I know on a 4th and goal, they ran like Tua left, right? It was just a QB run to the left off tackle. And I believe it was Cleveland Verl, who just almost went untouched.
Yeah.
And destroyed the play behind the line of scrimmage. And they won the moments. That's what I'm going to keep harping on. It's what they did on 3rd down to keep Alabama away from moving the chains. What they did on 4th down. Alabama finished, 3 of 6?
Yeah.
The Alabama had to go for 6 4th downs. That's just, and it's not just the defensive line. It's Kendall Joseph in the linebacking core everywhere. It's the secondary weathering an injury. I think it was a cramp in the second half. And Mark Fields, I believe, was the guy who came in. He was making plays. It was challenging balls at the top of their the passing arc. It was just a total every down effort. And yes, I do think it 100% started with the line just making life hell for the Alabama offense.
So do we learn anything now from Tua after seeing him go up against a really good Clemson team? Again, we saw Tua burst onto the scene.
Sure.
Win the national championship against Georgia a year ago in overtime. That was a great game. Clearly, Tua has had an amazing year. He had 41 touchdown passes. Mm-hmm. But this was fundamentally a much different
without
game.
A lot of second halves.
Yeah, without a lot of second halves. He's an incredible college football talent and will continue to be so, at least for one more year on the college stage. But this was a different Tua that we saw. And I don't know if you can put it all on him because, again, that line really did win the point of attack against Alabama's front. But to see Tua kind of on his back foot, at times frantic, that this was a different side of him. Every quarterback is going to see this over the course of their career. There are no exceptions, but it was just a much, much different stage for him in this setting now to see him kind of, frankly, where a lot of Alabama's opponents are on the offensive side.
So I can't in good conscience say something like, well, Tua on the big stage or Tua didn't play up to the moment.
No, you can't say that.
That is taking away a ton from what this all-time Clemson defense was able to accomplish. And I think that was it. I mean, the first interception was uncharacteristic. He was throwing to the wide side, throwing to the field side. The pass was behind the receiver, and it was just easy pick six. It was just bad pass, bad read, bad execution, blah, blah, blah. His second interception, he saw something that wasn't there. And
would you say he was seeing ghosts?
I don't even know if he was seeing ghosts. He just went into the house. What is the Ghostbusters, the pack?
Oh, the Proton Pack.
The Proton Pack. Thank you. It's been a while. He just went into a house firing. He didn't see ghosts. He was just like, it was a heat check moment when he went deep on that pass. I think he saw man coverage, perhaps. Maybe that was the ghost he saw. They were in some variation, it looked like to me, of cover 3. So it was Travion Mullen who made plays all over the place. He was also the one who got home against Tua on a corner blitz. So he had that left side of the field, and he was just playing the left side of the field, and he was just running alongside a receiver while somebody else was underneath. And it was just it was a bad pass, it was a bad read, and I think that led to a touchdown, right?
Yeah.
So it was both those interceptions, either directly or indirectly, led to points. And that is Clemson. That is Clemson perhaps making Tua see ghosts, but it was a terrific game plan. It was forcing Tua to be perfect, and at times he looked like he was. I mean, the throw to Jerry Jeudy early was
he still throws
Tua's here.
A hell of a deep ball. I know it didn't all work out last night, but it'd be silly to taunt Tua at this point after he's done so many great things already and say, wow, he's not a big game player.
Yes, and they ran the ball decently enough early, but there was a team that made mistakes, small, medium, large. I still remember that fake field goal.
Oh, yeah.
I just took a screen grab rewatching, and that wide shot, I think it was the wire cam shot of what Clemson's defense was in, and what after the game, Alabama's, I don't know if it was the kicker or the holder, said, we knew they might be in that look, and we still liked it.
It was a base 4-3 or something. I mean, it was. There was.
I can bring up the screenshot. This is, definitely a visual medium. But as you look at it, there's 4 down linemen. There's a standing like edge rush or whatever. It would be a 4-5-2, I guess technically, and they're just all facing, looking at each other, and saying, "You know what to do if and when they fake it." And Alabama's kicker is staring directly into this, and the holder is looking directly into this and saying, "Yep, 4th and 6. I think we got this." And spoiler alert, they did not.
It was the least special teams formation for Clemson in that moment.
It's been a hell of a last month for botched fakes between,
oh my God,
Georgia, the Oregon Red Box Bowl disaster fiasco with the fake, and this. It's been rough for creativity, execution, actual deciding to go through with itness. And Alabama wasn't going to, I guess, call a timeout, thinking, okay, we're still down 15 with 10 minutes left in the third quarter. Let's not waste a timeout here. If this is not indeed the full field goal unit we want on the field.
Yeah.
But nope.
Well, you know what, Dan? There is no longer any excuse for wearing an ill-fitting suit.
No. An excuse for that fake or an excuse for wearing an ill-fitting suit. Yeah.
Indochino is North America's leading made-to-measure menswear company. They make suits and shirts to your exact measurements for an unparalleled fit and comfort. Just visit a showroom or have a stylist take your measurements personally, or you can measure yourself at home. And you can shop online at Indochino.com. That's INDOCHINO.com. Then you choose your fabric and design customizations like your lapel, your lining, your pockets, your buttons, your monogram, if you're into such things. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Then you just chill. You relax. You get your suit professionally tailored and mailed to you in a couple of weeks. We've had countless folks that have purchased Indochino through the show, be it for a wedding, just for a formal occasion. We don't judge. Whatever suits your fancy. That's why you go to Indochino.com. Sure. People have been very, very satisfied with the quality, with the experience, you name it. We would encourage everyone now to go on out to Indochino.com and enter SOLID at checkout. You can get any premium Indochino suit for just $359. Yeah,
Steal.
That's 50% off the regular price for a made-to-measure premium suit. Shipping is free. Again, that is Indochino, INDOCHINO.com. Your promo code is SOLID. Any premium suit, just $359 and free shipping. An incredible deal for a limited time for a premium made-to-measure suit, Daniel.
You know who could probably use a better fitting suit? This is something I did notice. Dabo Swinney.
Really?
I was watching.
I'm not used to seeing him in a suit, actually.
I know. Well, Saban always comes out in a suit. You see that, entering the stadium stuff. Dabo walked out on the field a little bit, I think, after Nick Saban to just get a sense. How's the turf moving tonight?
Right.
Which is actually pretty important in Levi Stadium. There's always the option that, there's a bunch of sprinklers in the way. Anyway, so Dabo Swinney comes out and his suits, he's a pretty in shape dude. Former college football player. He's under 50. It's a pretty baggy suit.
Really?
And if he's going to be in this position for these next few years with Clemson, as I imagine he will be, on this big national stage, we got to get him a better suit.
Do you think he's going to pull a Rick Vaughn when Rick Vaughn got famous and then started wearing suits in Major League 2?
I think if he's going to have to wear a suit, and I appreciate the reference to Wild Thing.
Sure.
Because in many ways, Tebow is our Wild Thing. We got to get a little bit slimmer a fit going on. There was some Tracy McGrady-esque qualities.
Oh no!
It fit fine. Tracy McGrady's did not fit, but he could stand to go to Indochino.com for sure.
How do you feel about this seemingly new trend to wear the Snow White suit, like Morgan Freeman in Bruce Almighty?
Well, wasn't he playing God?
He was playing God, but he was wearing the Snow White suit.
So it's a full white suit.
Yeah, I think Bradley Cooper tried to pull that off at the Golden Globes. I've seen a couple other athletes trying to pull that off. You like that? Would you go Snow White?
When I hear Morgan Freeman and then Bradley Cooper, my next name is Ty Hildenbrand.
That's right.
Every time.
That's right.
Every time. So my answer is yes. If and when you renew your vows, that's what I expect.
Snow White suit, you got it. Indochino.com. Use the promo code SOLID at checkout. Get your suit. All right, where do we want to go next? There's a whole lot to cover here. We talked ad nauseum about what Trevor Lawrence did, what Tua Tagovailoa had to face in this national championship, and certainly how Clemson won in the trenches. With any national championship game, though, and certainly now this apparatus that ESPN has constructed around it, it's a whole experience when you're sitting at home on your couch watching. You've got multiple options. So you've got the main broadcast feed, which was Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit.
Yep.
We had the ESPN2 feed.
Who was on the field? It was Bernaldi and Maria Taylor?
Maria Taylor and Tom Rinaldi were on the field.
Good.
Sure. Yep. Did a great job. We had the ESPN2 feed, which it wasn't the Homer cast, as I think we've seen before with our friend Adam Amin, but Adam was down on the field alongside Steve Levy. Yep. I think they had some personalities that they were able to rotate in and out, but I caught a big chunk of Jonathan Vilma, who did a great job on the field alongside Steve Levy, as well as Gene Chizik, who was doing his part to call out some plays alongside Adam Amin earlier in the game.
Long sideburns? What are we talking? Mutton chops?
You couldn't see the sideburns because he had the headset on.
Oh.
And I was desperate for him to maybe just scratch his ear or something to remove the earphone to see if he had grown any sideburns. I'm going to assume that he can't because he never has had them, but it really would have been the upset of the night if he removed them and we saw some mutton chops there.
That would have been wonderful. Yeah, I watched a little bit of that on my iPad as I was out. Someday I'll tell the story unexpectedly. But yeah, I watched the first half of my iPad and I was going through a couple of the different feeds. Definitely interesting. I didn't watch the who was it? Greg McElroy, and who does he host a show with? Somebody on the SEC network. I did not watch that feed. Did not watch the Monday Night Football feed. Did not watch the Skycam or Blimp feed, whatever they had going on. I appreciate it. I think there's a command center feed.
Yeah, so the command
with a bunch of different angles.
A lot of people on the Instagram chat when we were doing our live thing were talking up the command center feed, and I watched it. So what they had is in the top right corner, they had the game feed. If you were watching regular ESPN. I think in the top left corner, they had the Skycam to the wire cam where you could get that on-field view. And then in the middle, they had statistics, running statistics. So after each play, that window would update to show you the latest statistics. I tried to watch it, and it was sensory overload for me.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I couldn't focus on one, which is weird because it's not all that different from when I'm used to watching multiple games on a Saturday. But just to have it all on one screen to me was a little
you have a bunch of text and numbers. You ever been in a TV truck for like any sporting event?
I have, actually. There's a lot going on. A lot going on in those.
I went and did a documentary with old company I worked for, and we did a little documentary feature on the Fox Sports A-Team NFL truck, which is 3 trucks, and I was in the booth in the truck for that. That's a lot.
There's a lot going on.
You can't imagine what's going on with that. So yeah, command center's rough. I was just happy because we didn't have the coaches whatever feed film room to watch the main feed with Fowler and Herbstreit and the 2 reporters down on the field. I will say this as it relates to the broadcast, Ty. That was as ideal an outcome if it was going to be a comfortable win as possible. Because you had Bama down at the half.
Right.
But everybody thinking, including you, checking the money line, thinking, it's only a matter of time. I'm going to keep watching. If it were 31-16 Alabama, you're thinking, this is crockpotting. They're going to win this one 40-21. It's never even going to feel that close. But I don't know when it was. I mean, I had tweeted out at a certain point that this one's far from over in the middle of the third quarter. It was over for sure.
Dan, there was an element of disbelief that kept a lot of people awake to watch that full game.
Yes. And so in terms of ratings, in terms of interest and stuff, it's as ideal a comfortable win on a game, in a game like that, in a spot like this, as probably ESPN could have hoped for. So yeah, I guess if you are in Bristol, good for you.
Yeah, so the only 2 final points here that I'll add about the broadcast. Yeah. I did catch a little bit of the Monday Night Football feed, and I switched it off not because I was repulsed by Jason Witten or anything like that.
Yeah, we like Joe Test, though.
Yeah, I mean, there were just a lot of other options that I found a little bit more attractive. I had friends watch the Monday Night Football feed, and they texted me, and they said that Booger McFarland was killing it. He did a great job.
Oh, good.
So, I want to give that its due. It sounds like that actually went off pretty well. please write in. Let me know what you think. I also want to give a shout out to our friend Adam Amin. Now, I'm sure people will hear this and think that we're terribly biased, and to some degree we are.
But who doesn't like Adam Amin? Come
Everyone
on, that
likes
says
Adam
more
Amin.
about them than us. Yeah.
I can't emphasize this enough. To call a game, to do play-by-play, is extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
Way harder than the drivel we put out there twice a week. It is infinitely more difficult.
Good use of drivel.
For him to be able to do that as well as he did from the sideline, walking around, having to avoid footballs being thrown at him and people in the way. You could see he was carrying his sheet down there. For the most part, he was the one commentating that field pass look that we got on ESPN2. Yeah. And I just thought he did a hell of a job. So I don't know if Adam's listening, but good job to you, sir. Good job all college football season long. You were really a star on that ESPN2 field pass.
Did you see the tweet from somebody? This is definitely not from us. I think it was ahead of an NFL playoff game when it was announced that Booger was not going to be in the Booger Mobile along the sideline, which is certainly raised up so he can get a better view, that he was not going to be in the Booger Mobile, but he was going to be in the booth. And somebody had tweeted out, man, just let Booger, just attach him to the wire cam and let him just swing behind plays and have the players and punters and stuff have to avoid him. That's a tough ask because of his size, a former lineman. Adam Amin is perfectly sized to do the wire cam attachment. So there's that. Let's talk about Alabama's defense for a moment.
Yeah, let's.
Alabama's defense early on in the season kind of maligned. They're replacing 5 starters in the secondary from last year. And the way that they play a lot of times, there are 5 guys back there, and that sort of base nickel that they are known to run. They lose Terrell Lewis before the season, arguably their best pass rusher. Christian Miller obviously gets hurt against Oklahoma, who then becomes their best pass rusher without Terrell Lewis. And still, Alabama is in a place where they finish the season either number 1 or number 2 defensively in terms of whatever metric you care about. And Clemson just doesn't care. They just make every play. They're not necessarily always going at a specific player, even though I think it was Justin Ross who ragdolled, was it Savion Smith on the long touchdown?
Oh, right.
Who then got hurt. I don't know if he rolled an ankle on that play.
Yep.
And then obviously Justin Ross, goes to the end zone. But it was, whether it was, Mac Wilson maybe overrunning a play or two, or the defensive line just not being able to collapse the pocket with any sort of consistency. For what Clemson did against this, watching what Clemson did against this Alabama defense, it wasn't, we see a weakness here, that's what we're going to focus on. It's, we're going to play our game and force them to consistently beat us. And that's not something that a lot of teams have done against the best of Alabama defenses. And Clemson, you can argue for sure, a couple of years ago when Deshaun Watson wins the national championship, totally fearless, his pants are ripping, he's being helicoptered, whatever. But it was to give up, it was 37 points they ultimately gave up because of the pick six. It's just Buster Douglas. I mean, except Clemson is not that kind of underdog.
Let's take a look at what Alabama did defensively down the stretch.
Yeah.
For the most part. So we're not too keen on the total yards stat.
Sure.
Because that can be a bit deceiving. But in terms of yards per play, let's look at Alabama's last 3 games, starting first weekend of December, then the bowl game, playoff semifinal in the Orange Bowl against Oklahoma, and Clemson. Those are the 3 best teams they played all year. LSU might try to argue to the contrary, but I would argue that Georgia, Oklahoma, and Clemson are a cut above.
Mm-hmm.
Against Georgia, 5.75 yards per play. Against Oklahoma, 6.83 yards per play. Against Clemson, 7.65 yards per play. It seemed to get worse as they played better teams down the stretch. Certainly not a knock against that Alabama defense. I would imagine that would happen to most defenses when you play against better offenses.
Sure.
But it does stand to reason that against better teams, this defense started to show a little bit more of its flaws.
I think that you can even drill down into a more detailed level, but it's also, I think, a bigger picture thing. When you look at, and Alabama has been the standard defensively since 2009, 2010, something like that. And Clemson since 2015, when they really started to build up that depth. When you look at the teams to succeed or beat those Alabama teams or these recent Clemson teams, I think there is something bigger. And first of all, you have to have a quarterback who is fearless. If you look at the guys who have gotten to like 10 plus yards per attempt in the pocket, wherever, it's Johnny Manziel, it's Chad Kelly, it's Bo Wallace, Steven Garcia early on in 2010. They have these big receivers. We've talked about this ad nauseum, whether it was, Evan Ingram up the middle, Laquan Treadwell, Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Mettenberger had success against them in 2013. You have like the standout, all-timers in Johnny Manziel and Cam Newton.
Right.
To me, that at this point says, if you're a program that has, and obviously against Clemson, it was, weirdly enough, Nate Peterman, who didn't get to 10 yards per attempt, but I think he had 5 touchdowns, and obviously tested Clemson deep and succeeded. It is not teams saying, we're going to control the game on the ground, we're going to play smash mouth football. There's few and far between instances. I know Trey Mason had a really good game against Alabama one year.
That's right.
But that needed to be coupled with the most miraculous modern play that we've seen in the kick six. James Conner had a pretty decent game against Clemson. But a thing I'm starting to take away, I don't think this is absolute, but something I'm pretty strongly leaning towards. If you hire a coach, if you're a team that has designs on competing nationally, which means winning a Power 5 conference, which means being competitive in a playoff game. I apologize, Ty. Notre Dame obviously was the better defense against Clemson in the playoff. But if you have designs of that, coming in and saying, we are going to be a smash mouth team, we're going to control the game on the ground, we're going to be a power team, that is telling the world, we have a ceiling. And that ceiling is, we don't want to compete with the best of the best of the best. And I say that as somebody who roots for a team with a coach like that, with designs of that, with recruiting on that level. And we saw that with Clemson's strategy against Alabama last night. We've seen that as Alabama has evolved to that point. They're still going to run the ball, but in those biggest games, that ball that is going to Tua and is going to whoever, Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, whoever.
I think that's true to an extent. The caveat here is Clemson and Alabama. You can compete with most of the other teams in college football if you've got a really strong identity, if you've got the right personnel to execute properly.
Right. Well, that's not everything goes through them. So
Right.
You are competing regionally unless you have a quarterback who can dramatically alter a game going downfield with big targets, and not sort of trying to adhere to an older ethos. We've seen it with Michigan. We've seen it with whoever, USC, Stanford. We've seen it across college football now. We've seen it with Washington, really struggling in the playoff against Alabama. We see it year in and year out. Michigan State,
Wisconsin
in the playoff. Right. That you can win 10 games with that sort of identity. And that I'm not going to tell you not to. And if you're a program that really realistically is not going to have that chance, if you're Cal, if you're Minnesota, if you are whoever, Baylor, this is not to look down on any of these programs, but they're just not ever going to most likely compete on this level. Do whatever it needs to win a bunch of games, beat rivals, get to 8-9 wins. That's considered a success. But if this goal, if you're spending money, if you're hiring coaches, if you're recruiting on the level that says we want to win 11 games and play in NFL stadiums in January, late December, I'm not saying you have to go air raid. I'm saying you have to realize what football is in 2018, 2019, 2020. And, jumbo packages all the time, that ain't it. And I think that's what we have gotten to with the evolution of Alabama, with what we saw from Clemson, and what I think is it's going to take. And I believe it'll happen with Ohio State, with Ryan Day running the show. I don't think they're going to be nearly as stubborn offensively. I think there is going to have to be a come to Jesus or whoever your chosen deity is moment for Michigan, because those are the teams that could potentially recruit on that level and put together defenses on a huge level, and just need to figure out how they can get the ball to speed in an open area as often as possible.
A big part of that, though, is depth.
And those are the teams that can build that kind of depth. Florida State, whoever.
The teams that can build that depth are the ones that are best suited to run more of the system, I'll call it, that you're describing, one that's not truly a system defined by identity, but one defined by depth, one defined by putting your personnel in the best position to succeed, much the way we saw with Dabo Swinney. Like you described earlier, he wasn't so much giving Travis Etienne the ball because he had to. He was doing so when it made sense.
Sure.
Maybe that's more of the model moving forward now as we go against these teams that have just so much depth that they can beat you a variety of different ways. I don't know. It's a tall mountain to climb if you're on the outside looking in. If you're a team like a Notre Dame or a team even like an Oklahoma that's got a lot of talent, that got to the playoff, that did their best against two respective buzzsaws in Alabama and Clemson, there is still a bit of a gap, though, between where those teams are at and where I think they need to get to if they truly want to compete.
By the way, I don't think Oklahoma stylistically is off from what I just described. They were a matter of defense. I think Notre Dame could stand to build up the depth of speed and passing aggression.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. There is a depth on defense that we see with Alabama and Clemson that does not exist on the Oklahoma side. And perhaps that will get better now they've hired Alex Grinchaway from Ohio State. We'll see what he's able to do in Norman. But
I saw Pete Kwiatkowski from Washington was rumored for a co-DC linebackers role there as well. Sure. Murderers row.
As we look forward now into 2019, throughout the course of this week, over the span of the next couple weeks, you're going to start seeing these way too early top 25s. We're not going to break down the top 10, but with these two teams in mind, Dan, it's going to be 1-2 again next year too, isn't it?
I imagine. I mean, Clemson loses so much along the lines on both sides of the ball. Not that they haven't recruited there, not that they haven't worked in, the twos to get a ton of snaps, but it's hard to imagine with the offensive skill and the way that Clemson has recruited and the offensive skill, so I think Alabama loses a lot up front on both sides of the ball as well. I can't imagine there is a strong who are the other cases for? We don't know what Oklahoma is going to look like personnel-wise on offense or defensively. Notre Dame, Georgia. Notre Dame loses a lot on defense, right?
Yeah. Georgia, maybe.
Georgia should be in a terrific position.
Yeah. Ohio State, you can throw Ohio State in there, although there's going to be some turnover at the top.
Dwayne Haskins declared.
Dwayne Haskins declaring, Ryan Day taking over, sure.
There is not clear examples of, there's nobody in the Pac-12 right now. I mean, Washington's still probably considered the favorite, but Oregon returns Justin Herbert. Washington loses a ton on defense. And then, Michigan appears to have a ceiling. Even though Shea Patterson is back, they lose. Obviously, we've seen what they've lost on the defensive side of the ball. And there is just, Florida and Florida State, we expect improvement. Florida obviously finished the season in impressive fashion, but to me, right now, the way their offense operates with still having a little bit of the battering ram mentality with the quarterback and that Dan Mullen offense, really good, might have a ceiling. Yeah. Might have a ceiling in 2019 if you are not able to, if Felipe Franks is the one counted on to win huge games with his arm, right now with the evidence we have, feels like a ceiling.
Yeah. All right, Dan. Well, there you go. 44-16 is your final score. Clemson, again, finishes the year 15-0. Yeah. One of the best teams in the history of college football, undoubtedly, the way that they dismantled Alabama. Congratulations to them. Mm-hmm. Congratulations to Alabama on an incredible season. Congratulations to all the teams that made the playoffs, all the teams that won bowl games, and more specifically, Dan, congratulations to our Verballers. Let's give a round of applause to the listeners of this dumb show who hung with us all throughout the college football season, enjoyed our stupid banter and our appreciation for college football. It's been a hell of a ride here. As we move into our off season now, Dan, can you whet the appetite of some new Verballers who might be listening for the first time? Maybe they saw the Instagram live feed and decided to tune into the show. maybe they just picked us up midstream here throughout the course of the 2018 season. What can folks expect now as we switch up to once a week? Every Wednesday is when we're going to start dropping shows from this point until the start of the new season. What kind of stuff are we going to be putting out there?
So we'll be doing more Q&As. We'll be doing what we call a scheme theme. That generally happens in the spring, where we talk to specific types of nerdy experts and coaches about elements of college football strategy that have evolved, that are new, and just like, okay, what is it that TCU does on defense to combat RPOs? Something like that. We talked last year with Chris B. Brown, aka Crispy Brown, about communication and signaling and language, verbiage involved with getting plays off and executing whatever. And so we do have a time of year where we nerd out like that. We will talk to coaches, sometimes new coaches. And we just do random, like in August, we have a thing, we do the fantasy things draft, where we draft narratives instead of players, because fantasy college football is something that is ever really appealing.
There were some narratives that came out of this one last night.
Yes, there were.
I'm very excited about 2019 and what this has in store for us.
Yeah, we keep going. And so we will, shine spotlights on specific teams or conferences or, storylines to be followed. We have another signing day to discuss in a few weeks. We have, probably the coaching carousel will spin a couple more times, with NFL perhaps hiring coaches. I know Matt Rule and the Jets are hot and heavy at the time we're recording this, and Cliff Kingsbury might be a head coach or an offensive coordinator. So we'll try to dig deep with new coaches and their fits at their new places, and just generally try to turn over every rock and nerd out over what college football has to offer between now and when do we start previewing? Late July?
Late July, yeah.
We're not going anywhere. At the very least, we will continue to sound the best of any college football podcast. Right. The bar is incredibly low, and so we are happy to hurdle it and give you content as often. Sometimes listen. May give you a couple shows in a week. I don't know.
We'll see what we can do.
We'll surprise you sometimes.
The best way to stay in touch about the new stuff that we're going to be doing, because of course there will be live shows, which we're working on now.
Correct.
Way in advance of when we normally do. There will be more merch coming forward.
For sure.
Sign up for the newsletter. If you go to our website, solidverbal.com, you'll see it. It's right there. Type in your email address. We don't send them out that frequently, but when we have new and exciting things to announce, that's usually the first line of defense. You can also follow us out on Twitter. You can follow us out on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram. Those are the main channels where we try to announce any new happenings in the Solid Verbal world, new guests coming out there. If you're a super fan, like we have so many super fans, don't forget to check out the subreddit at reddit.com/r/solidverbal. They got some stuff that they're working on. It's totally separate from us, but a teeming community of Solid Verbal fans, verballers, as it were. So a lot of exciting stuff ahead here in 2019. Just because this season is over does not mean we stop podcasting. We're going to be with you all throughout the doldrums that are the college football offseason.
Ty, where do you put, this is our engaging end to the show.
Okay, the cliffhanger?
'Cause I don't have my answer yet,
okay.
And maybe you won't. Where do you put, just in Solid Verbal history, so since the 2008 season, I want to say?
Sure.
Where does this Clemson team fall of the last 10 national champions, who I have in front of me, in terms of just pure dominance, in terms of how impressed you are? It's not to say, okay, if this team played the 2008 Florida team on the neutral. No. Just tell me who is definitively ahead of this Clemson team. Last year's Alabama team. So that's Tua coming in at the end in relief.
Right.
Really good team. Clemson, Deshaun Watson. So that's 2 years ago. So it's a lot of it. There's a lot of overlap in the way these two teams have played and are built personnel-wise.
Right.
2015 Alabama, which was that big Derrick Henry year.
That was the Derrick Henry year, sure.
That was an impressive year, but that was Jake Coker, who was fine. That was Lane Kiffin, Derrick Coker, Jake Coker, Derrick Henry. I want to say, who was their leading receiver that year? Oh, Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley, yeah.
At Ohio State, Zeke Elliott, Cardale Jones beating Oregon in Texas. I was there. That was a really good effect. That was Darren Lee on the defensive side of the ball. A lot of talent on that Ohio State team. That what they lose to, was that the year they lost to Virginia Tech to start the season?
I believe so.
The national championship? Yep.
I believe so, yep.
You have the Jameis redshirt freshman year, Florida State, which basically everybody on that Florida State team went to the NFL.
Yeah. That one jumped out to me.
Yeah, 2012 Bama, which was, I think, the Johnny Manziel loss. They lose. That's A.J. McCarron, Eddie Lacy. They beat Notre Dame in the national championship.
Wow. 2011
is what I think is considered to be the all-time Alabama defense, right?
That's right.
That's where they have everyone. Right. RG3 wins the Heisman. That's Trent Richardson and Eddie Lacy. A.J. McCarron is throwing the passes, but still, that defense is stupid. 2010 Cam Newton, Auburn, not a great defense, but an all-timer at quarterback. 2009 Alabama is the team that beat Texas in the national championship, and that is, I think, a McElroy team, Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, and another, just stupid defense. Javier Arenas, Rolando McClain. I'm just naming players.
You're just naming guys, yeah.
Just naming, and then finally that 2008 Florida
team with Tebow.
That was Tebow's as a starter, not as like the Chris Leak relief. Chris Rainey, Percy Harvin, Emmanuel Moody. Wow, I've not said that name in a long, long time. But just a ridiculous defense, all sorts of speed. Urban Meyer team.
So you're asking me,
Clemson's fit in that roster?
Well, we've had the pleasure throughout the course of this run to look at some great college quarterbacks. And again, college doesn't always translate to the NFL. It didn't for Tebow, but Tebow was a transcendent player on the college stage and fit that system really, really well. We've seen the likes of Cam Newton. We've seen the likes of Jameis Winston. I'm having a hard time, and perhaps it's just because this game happened last night, finding other teams on this list that felt as dominating both on defense and offense the way we saw against another really good team like we saw last night.
It's the complete element of Clemson.
That's not to say that some of these other teams couldn't go toe-to-toe with this Clemson team.
Sure.
You mentioned that great Alabama defense. I would love to see what they could have done against this Clemson offensive line. And certainly there were moments along the way. That Cam Newton team, that, as you know full well, there was an element to that team that felt almost untouchable on offense.
Sure.
But the complete package is certainly here with Clemson. And far be it from me to rule them out against any of these teams. Just the way they came together, the way that system congealed down the stretch after September, when Trevor Lawrence got a little bit more comfortable. Mm-hmm. It's tough to look at this roster here and say that this Clemson team couldn't have at least given a game, if not have beaten most of the other schools that we've listed.
So I would, without thinking a lot about it, I would have them ahead of 2017 Alabama.
Yeah, for sure.
The Jalen Hurts team.
For sure.
I would have them ahead of 2015 Alabama, but close. But the Jake Coker thing scares me a little bit. But Lane Kiffin certainly did a terrific job with that Alabama offense. I think I would have them ahead of 2014 Ohio State because, what did they turn the ball over 4 times against Oregon?
Yeah.
I just don't think they're weathering a performance like that against this Clemson defense.
I have a hard time when I try to think about 2013 Florida
That Florida State team is...
Yeah, that's the one to me that jumps out.
That's on that complete level.
That's right.
With how much talent was on both sides of the ball. 2011 is really tough for me because that is probably the best modern defense, if it's not this year's Clemson team, just because they had to prove it so often. 2012 Alabama, we can talk about. I'd probably have them ahead of 2010 Auburn and 2009 Bama, not because the starters on 2009 Bama were anything short of really good. They just didn't have the depth because that was Saban's third year.
I think for me, I think Florida State in 2013 is the one that I have the most difficulty with. That's why I hedge a bit in putting Clemson at the very top, because I
think that's right.
That Florida State team was loaded.
Yeah.
And the other teams were obviously very, very good as well. But that Florida State team to me really jumps out.
Yeah. So I would say out of those 10, I think this year's Clemson team is probably at worst second or third.
Top 3. Yeah.
So that's, given the talent and success and production of all of those teams, what an absurd Clemson team this was.
Unbelievable. Yeah. What a job by Dabo Swinney. What a job by Nick Saban that we're here again. It was Clemson, Alabama, part 4 over the last 4 years. perhaps there will be a part 5.
Yeah, and by the way, we should say in terms of complete teams and performances, this Alabama team this year is ahead of a lot of these
Oh
teams.
my God, yeah.
Because it is
sure.
the clear most complete Alabama team of the last decade.
They were incredible.
Yeah.
Ran into a buzzsaw. All right. Well, thank you for bearing with us over the last hour or so. We will be back in the near future.
Yes.
Talking more college football. We are at solidverbal.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Check the subreddit at reddit.com/r/solidverbal. That is created by Verballers for Verballers. And of course, as a last resort, please do sign up for our newsletter, the Newsletter of Intent, which we send out from time to time with big announcements. You can find that on our website at solidverbal.com. One more time, congratulations, Clemson. You are the college football national champions. For my good friend over there in beautiful New York City, Dan Rubenstein, and for myself over here in PA, my name is Ty Hildebrandt. We will see you when we see you. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.